Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of Big Guy Fantasy Sports Fantasy Football Consistency Show. We are back heading into Week 14. Byemagedon 2, the sequel, is coming up this week. As always, I'm Bob Lung with Big Guy Fantasy Sports, and that guy is always Ron Rigney with his Colts hat, proudly wearing that. Hey, really, he's just a chill guy. Even though he's in Florida, chill guy is who I am right now because it's 7 degrees outside with the wind chill. Welcome to Ohio. Like I haven't lived here for 60 years or something. But Ron, how you doing down there in warm, sunny Florida, where I'd rather be right now?
Well, you talk about the 7 degrees, but hey, we've been struggling this week. It's been down in the 40s. We've had to get the hoodies out and get out
Yeah.
the warm
40.
weather clothes. So
Yeah, 40. You guys are wearing scarves and gloves at 40. Come on.
that's what I'm saying. It only got up to 75 today, so we're doing okay despite the conditions. But yeah, I got the horseshoe on the hat this week. We're excited. We beat the worst offense in the league and a 3-10 non-playoff team. So there's a lot to get excited about in Indianapolis.
There it is. Yeah. Anthony Richardson doing a little bit better. As long as he keeps throwing to Alex Pierce, that's all I care about.
Yeah.
And Michael Pittman. Yeah, that'd be good. Those two guys would be great. If you can pick that up for weeks 16 and 17, that'd be fantastic. So anyway, as always, we're here every week to talk to you about the most consistent players in fantasy football. And we are, 1 week away. After this week, we will be heading into round 1 of the playoffs, week 15, depending on your league. Some leagues only have 4 teams in. They'll play 16 and 17, which I do in my longtime touchdown-only league, which I have to sadly admit, I'm eliminated from the playoffs. The guys who I thought were going to be really strong running backs for rushing for touchdowns just weren't that. I had Rachaad White, and I had Alvin Kamara, and I had who else? A bunch of guys who I thought were going to rush for touchdowns, and haven't done that much. And then my quarterbacks, it's just been a rough year. I made some poor decisions in the offseason, so I got to rethink and make some changes. I drafted Derrick Henry in every league, and I should have drafted him in this league, and I didn't. I was like, oh, I'm fine. I've got Kamara. I've got Rachaad White, who had 10, 12 touchdowns last year, and didn't know who this Bucky Irving guy was, so I wasn't worried. And, like I said, hasn't worked out. But I've got some great prospects for the future. I've got Trey Benson, and I've got Ray Davis. So I'm hoping that those at very cheap dollars. So let them guys, move into their spots down the road. Maybe James Cook will move on, or, James Conner finally gets too old, but he's still being a badass like he always is every year. He's just one of those guys every year. We're like, oh, well, this is the year. He's done. He's too old. Nope, goes out there and just does his job. Nothing fancy, nothing spectacular, but he's one of our consistent guys we love so much, and just didn't give him the love this year. Maybe we should have. So speaking of love, let's give some love to the quarterback position, and running away with it now almost 60 points ahead of second place is Lamar Jackson with 359 points, 12 out of 13, 92%. There's nobody close. The next group is 75%, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold. Yes, you heard me right. Sam Darnold is 8th in total points and 75% consistent, tied for second place in consistency. If you bet on that one in the offseason, you did very well. Jaden Daniels, 69%, 67%, Joe Burrow, and Jalen Hurts, even though Jalen Hurts won out of his last 3. Not doing that well. 63% Tua, 60% Jordan Love. After that, that's it. That's the only one's over 60%. Not a good sign. Now, granted, we had a lot of love for, of course, Jordan Love. If we could stay a little more healthy, I think you could have done better in total points, obviously. But the consistency has been there. We were definitely big fans of Joe Burrow. Those kind of folks. As later round picks in the draft. So those have been working out, and in those leagues that I have, those guys been doing pretty well. But any other quarterback beyond that has not been doing well. So Ron, You know, we've said this has been probably the worst from a consistency standpoint for quarterbacks. You know, they're just not putting up the numbers they have in the past. Teams are certainly keeping the deep pass under wraps. That's why our good friend Patrick Mahomes is at 42%, even though he is 5 out of his last 6. Think about it, if he wasn't 5 out of his last 6, where he'd be. He's already terrible. He's you know, but he's 9th in total points, right? So good, not good. So tell us, Ron, you know, about your thoughts on this quarterback room, and who's somebody that you're kind of favoring this week as we head into week 14, possibly maybe to help, again, get through Byemagedon 2 for sure, and maybe even help some teams heading into the playoffs who might have questionable quarterback situations.
Yeah, there's not a lot out there on waivers, especially in those 14 teamers like you and I are in. Not a lot of help at quarterback. There's a couple of guys, but it's kind of scarce out there. So hopefully you loaded up already. But, you know, you got at the top, you mentioned Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. I did a look at some of the consistent quarterbacks that were late draft picks or sometimes not even drafted in my article last week. And I looked at those two guys, and a couple interesting situations there. You know, Baker Mayfield coming into next season, there's a little bit of talk about Raheem Morris possibly getting fired. Their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, is always a popular name as far as head coaching jobs. He'll probably get a couple interviews and could be gone. So that's a little something you got to look at there. But Sam Darnold's situation is pretty interesting because he's a free agent at the end of the year. They drafted J.J. McCarthy, brought him in. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And it doesn't make a lot of sense for Sam Darnold to stick around there and sign a big deal. If they got J.J. McCarthy, maybe they do. I don't know. But it stands to reason that Sam Darnold's going to cash in and be somewhere and hopefully be able to continue this fantasy goodness. But the guy that I want to focus on this week, not a guy that's going to be, you're going to scroll a little bit further down on that consistency list to find him, guy that we've kind of left for dead. Nice as a rookie, first-round pick, and that's Mac Jones. Mac Jones now in Jacksonville, and with the news of Trevor Lawrence being out for the year after that ridiculous hit that he suffered the other day against Houston, Mac Jones takes over as the starter. Now, I get it. Not a lot to play for in Jacksonville. That's another head coaching position is probably going to be open after the season. But Mac Jones might be playing for a job, so he might be a little bit more motivated. Got a clutch game last week when he came in. But when you look at their schedule is pretty favorable for teams that allow a little bit of work to the fantasy quarterback. And so they've got the Titans, the Jets, Raiders, Titans again, and the Colts. All those teams are in the bottom third over the last 5 weeks in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback. He's got Evan Engram. He's got Tank Bigsby. He's got Travis Etienne. He's got Brian Thomas Jr. down there to throw to. So, again, might have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. It's his time to be able to maybe earn a job somewhere in the league. I don't know if he's going to be in Jacksonville, but it could be somewhere. But, again, not a lot out there on waivers. So a guy that could be sitting out there that could be super cheap that might just be sitting that has a favorable schedule. If you have somebody, you know, just in case you need an insurance policy, we know the bye weeks are coming in this week. That's the last big one we have. So again, not a bad matchup here this week against the Titans. You could do a lot worse, but again, it's not just like you're plucking some unproven guy off the street. Yeah, he hasn't really shown it a whole lot lately, but again, guy had a nice rookie season, and we thought he was the next guy to follow in Tom Brady's footsteps here in New England. So he does have the pedigree. He does have the chops. So we'll see if he does it. But, again, paid next to nothing for him, so why not?
Yeah, no, I like it. Like you said, he got good weapons around him, favorable schedule. You know, their defense isn't that strong. So definitely somebody's going to have to put the ball up quite a bit. And, again, definitely sitting out there in most waiver wires outside of our deep leagues. But definitely love that. So, guy I'm going to highlight, and you know, proud to say we finally have a quarterback in Cleveland, and his name is Jameis Winston. Gotta love the guy. Just bubbly personality, just happy to be there, happy to have a job. You know, last week was, I mean, in the dictionary, beside Jameis Winston type game, man, talk about a beauty in Denver. 497 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions, and 2 of them were pick six, which is why the Browns lost in that game. But at least we had a shot. At least we were trying. At least he's out there giving it all. Can't say much more about that. And from a fantasy perspective, it's funny. I had somebody reach out to me and say, "Hey, Bob, Winston's out on the waiver wire. Should I pick him up?" And I go, "Well, what's your option? Other option?" He says, "Will Levis." And I go, "Okay, well, Will Levis is all right, but Will Levis is never going to throw 497 yards in a game or 395, which he did week 11, which is also, granted, he had a tough game against Pittsburgh. Guess what? Everybody does. It was his fault. But, when he's got he's got the weapons around him, Njoku, Judy, Elijah Moore, Nick Chubb coming out of the backfield. I mean, again, he's going to throw interceptions. It's just the way. I'm surprised that he got through the New Orleans game with 0 and the Pittsburgh game with only 1. But he gets pass happy. He gets aggressive. But you know what? I'd rather have that than Deshaun Watson rolling out and throwing 2-yard outs to, Judy or Cooper, whoever he was doing. So if you can get him. He might be the guy that takes you to, just like Joe Flacco did last year, might be the guy that takes you to a fantasy title. If, you're hurting a quarterback or you've got an inconsistent one like a Kirk Cousins or a Jared Goff or a Matthew Stafford, those kind of people, that up and down may not be what you need. And, Cleveland has had their one game against Pittsburgh. They do have another one coming down the road, so that could be rough. But, again, maybe you put in your other starter and you switch back and forth, do a little quarterback streaming through the playoffs. Winston could be the guy that helps you get there, or Mac Jones, either one. So definitely love those. Let's move on to the running back position. And, hey, Gabe, we still got 3 perfects. Again, running back's never perfect. I can't even remember. I think the last perfect running back I remember was Le'Veon Bell. That's how far back I think it goes. I'd have to double check. Maybe there was somebody else, but that's the only one that comes to mind. And how long ago was that? 10 plus years? But we got Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. Of course, Gibbs going tonight against Green Bay, but it's in Detroit, so should be another good game for him, both catching the ball, running the ball. 92%, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, David Montgomery, 83%. We've got Barkley and Aaron Jones. 82%. We got James Cook. 80%. Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, and Brian Robinson. As we've said all season, running backs are just consistency-wise putting up numbers we haven't seen in a long time for running backs, especially this kind of depth. I mean, we've got just randomly looking at the numbers, but probably 15 above 70%, maybe more. It might be closer to 20. So, this has certainly been a year. Definitely if you went not running back heavy, but if you kind of mixed it up a little bit more than you have in the past, you're probably doing pretty well with that. I mean, the leagues that I certainly have been doing well in, which is my 2 King Classic leagues, I've got a lot more running backs than I had wide receivers because, well, they were there and there was value. I grabbed J.K. Dobbins. I grabbed Brian Robinson, those kind of people in rounds 9, 10. Now, Dobbins got hurt, which I should have known better. I almost traded him like 3 weeks ago, and I knew I should have done it, but I didn't. But yeah, it's been a good year for running backs. And Ron, I know Kareem Hunt's really been another one we picked up. Maybe he'll keep sharing. Let's hope he does, and get his 10 points a game, which I'll take. But these running backs, what are some of the ones that you have kind of been successful with, and then which ones are you looking at that moving forward, keep an eye on that might again help folks through the playoffs?
Yeah, the main one I'm looking at is James Cook. James Cook is the guy that he's sitting there at 83%. He's in my one playoff team. I have him. Jonathan Taylor is another one. Went a little homer on that one, but he's been the consistent force with the Colts. He's missed a game or two, but again, the dude gets beat up. He's the one that gets the rock quite a bit. So that's kind of to be expected. But it's tough if you don't have those guys. And I think you kind of hit on it when you're looking at those teams that are successful in Kings Classic with those 3 flex spots. They're taking those guys like the Chase Browns and the Bucky Irvings of the world that you got later in the draft. And that's who you can plug in and forget it in your flex spot. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of those guys this year. I had more of them last year. But the guy that I'm going to focus on this week is a guy that we both have. You were able to stash him for a little while. He didn't come back until like week 7, and that's Nick Chubb. And again, it's kind of been a mixed bag with Nick Chubb. I don't know if and I think we're starting to kind of see the trend when these guys come off these knee injuries. It takes about a season and a half for him to kind of get up to speed. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with Nick Chubb. He saved us a couple times with some touchdowns. Had a couple 2 weeks ago, and then he had the one last week. He does have 2 consecutive clutch games, but it's mainly a result of those touchdowns. But again, if he is getting in the end zone, he's getting you that 6 points. He's getting you just enough to do it. Caught a few passes out of the backfield last week and took one of those in for a score. But again, a guy that you got super late, a guy that I had stashed until week 7 that I was able to put in my lineup. I'm just hoping that the workload stays there. I'm hoping to get him 15 to 20 carries. But again, that game flow, it hurt him last week. Jerome Ford was in there a little bit more, and that's the only downside to Nick Chubb is when it tends to be more of that passing script, which it was last week. Ford's going to outpace him. But again, he was able to take one to the end zone. So we want to see, those games like Pittsburgh, again, at Smash Mouth football where they're going to have to run it and play defense. And so a couple weeks ago against Pittsburgh, he did get the 20 carries and the touchdown. So hopefully we see that again. But again, a guy that didn't cost you a whole lot. Might be a guy, too, that maybe in the offseason you might be able to nab in a dynasty league that people might be a little bit leery of that knee injury. Maybe you can capitalize on that a little bit. So we'll see. But if you got him, not a bad idea to put him in that flex spot, especially in a deeper league.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, we all love Chubb here in Cleveland, and we're rooting for him. I wasn't sure it made sense for him to come back, but I know that's what he wanted. My thought was our season was basically a disaster, so why not just let him rest? But he wants to get out here. He wants to play. He's a trooper, and that's why we love him here in Cleveland. I'm going to go on the other side of that one and go against all Cleveland Browns fans and look at the 2 Pittsburgh Steelers running backs in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And just want to bring up how consistent they've been. Now, I know a lot of you are probably out there going, but geez, it's only 41 rushing, and one, 45. But they have combined out of the last 4 weeks, 7 clutch games between the 2 of them out of the 8 total possible clutch games. So that just shows you that Pittsburgh is very dedicated to keeping the ball on the ground and keeping the ball in the hands of the running backs, because it's not all rushes too. Jaylen Warren, the last 3 weeks, 4 for 55, 4 for 27, 3 for 19 passing wise. Najee Harris, 4 for 30, 6 for 54 last week against Cincinnati. Now, as you remember, that was a huge scoring game, 44-38. So, but he did have 75 yards rushing. But again, Jaylen Warren still earned a clutch game because he had that 455, which was 9.5 points. And then you put in an extra 9 yards there. And so put him just barely over the 10, but he got it. So he just made it. But these 2 guys, if you have them in your lineup or you have them on your bench and you kind of concerned, get them in there unless you've got just 2 studs you can't do without. But they have been very clutch as of late. So gotta love them. All right, let's move into the wide receiver position. Chris Godwin will continue to be at 100% the rest of the year, but only plays 7 games. Doesn't count. Who's really at the top? Jamar Chase, 11 out of 12, first in total points. And he's kind of pulling away too. Second place is Amon-Ra St. Brown with 215. And so, yeah, he's kind of pulling away just like, what did I say before? Not Derrick Henry. It was, Lamar Jackson for the quarterbacks. But so 90% Malik Neighbors, 89% A.J. Brown, Nico Collins, 86% T. Higgins, even though he's played 7 games, still putting up the clutch games now that he's healthy. Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson, 83%. Terry McLaurin, 75 or 77. 75% CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, Cortland Sutton, Diggs, who's out for the year, Rice, who's out for the year, and Shakir is the other one. He's at 73%. And a couple guys at 70 and 71s that are down and out. Josh Downs is still in, and he's 70%. Rest of them below that. This is pretty standard, I think, for the wide receiver position. I guess if there's anything, Ron, we see is there's a lot of big names that aren't up in that upper 70% range. like George Pickens, Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, all of these guys, Deebo Samuel, there's another one. Whether it's some of it's a little bit of injuries, but most of it's just no consistency. Chalk it up to rookie quarterbacks, poor offensive line, whatever the case may be. We're just not seeing the consistency out of some of these top guys like we have in the past. And, again, if you kind of took the chance on the running backs versus the wide receivers, that's why some of those teams are doing better than the other ones. So of these wide receivers, Ron, which ones, jump out to you as some of your favorite? And then talk about the receiver that you're thinking about or kind of looking at as, helping you move in the right direction over these past few weeks, maybe heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, one of the things I was kind of thinking about was, when we were getting ready to go on, as I was thinking about just the position as a whole. And one of the things I find is, it illustrates the fact that, we can do all the research that we do, and we can look at consistency and look at all the things that we look at and the matchups and the defenses and all that. But it illustrates the fact that these human beings have to go out there and perform like we think they can perform. And we get it right a fair amount, but it seems like a lot of these matchups in the last few weeks, especially with the quarterbacks and wide receivers, just have not panned out. I was thinking about it when we were talking about quarterbacks. I had Justin Herbert in our DFS lineup last week, and it looked like a nice matchup against Atlanta for both guys, and it ended up being like a 17-14 kind of grinded out game that we really didn't expect. I think Vegas said that total was around 50, and it got way, way under that. So unless you had Ladd McConkey on that Herbert McConkey stack, you didn't do too well. So as I'm looking here, again, I say this about every week, but I never would have thought that Josh Downs would have been the most consistent Colts wide receiver, but here we are, another guy that you got pretty late. So if you have Josh Downs at your flex spot, you're loving that. But the guy that I wanted to illustrate is a guy that we love on the show, a guy that we've talked about quite a bit, and that's Keenan Allen. And, one of the things about that Chicago offense is it is inconsistent. It's the exact opposite of what we talk about here. But Keenan Allen has kind of been that guy that you've seen. He's become a target machine in Chicago. And I think he fits it nicely because you've got DJ Moore, Rome Odunze to spread the field. And then you've got Keenan Allen, who's kind of just been that kind of just nasty, just get open, move the chains kind of guy. And when he's healthy, the dude he's legit. He's a big target, 6'2", 210, and he seems like he's hit the fountain of youth too. He's getting a little bit older, a little bit long in the tooth, and he doesn't show it at all. Last week, 5 for 75 and 2 scores. Week before that, 9 for 86. He's seen at least 6 targets in all games except 2, except 2. So he's getting the looks early and often from a rookie quarterback. Again, they're going to have to throw a little bit, and I see that being kind of the norm. The only thing you don't like about Chicago is, of course, we're getting to that part of the year where the weather in Chicago isn't great, but the Bears travel, or they have San Francisco this week. That's a little bit tough matchup, but again, you can get him on the road in a nice climate. But again, with what we're talking about with him being that moving the chains guy, maybe that weather kind of benefits him because they're not throwing it down the field. They're looking to get it to him a little bit more. But, shout out to Keenan Allen. Just there's a year in and year out. Only thing he needs to do with us is stay healthy. And he's been able to do that for the most part. He was kind of nicked up at the beginning of the year, but once he's got in there, he's been that Keenan Allen that we all know and love.
Yeah, and a lot of this has been a change since the Bears have changed OC. They fired there a few weeks ago, and with the new one kind of filling in, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, and Keenan Allen have all greatly benefited. And I think Cole Kmet's had some decent games too, if I'm not mistaken. They're certainly making, or they're certainly putting Caleb Williams in a situation to succeed, and not just letting him just go run crazy and try to do it himself. So and I think Keenan Allen is a good start for that because as a rookie quarterback, you need that security blanket. Sometimes it's your tight end, which I'm sure he certainly has been using Cole Kmet, but Keenan Allen can be that. He's basically a tight end in a wide receiver's body. He's been looking good. The guy I want to highlight plays for Atlanta, and it's not the guy who I've been bragging about all year, which is Darnell Mooney, because Darnell Mooney has been great. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if Darnell Mooney took pictures of Kirk Cousins' wife in a bad situation. I don't know what's going on, but all of a sudden Kirk Cousins is not looking Darnell Mooney's way. Now, I know Mooney's been a little bit injured, and so I feel like that hopefully is the situation, and we'll get Mooney back to health. They did have a bye week, but coming out of the bye week, Mooney still 3 catches, 20 yards. But Ray McCloud, 4 catches, 95 yards, even had a rush. They actually let him run the ball. And I know this guy's a speedster. I think he usually does punt returns or kick returns. I get it. But yeah, last 2 games, 4 for 95, 6 for 46 in the game before the bye. In that same game, Darnell Mooney, 2 for 27. So I don't know if this is going to continue. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Big week this week. Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota, so a little bit of a revenge game there. So let's hope that Minnesota's a little weak against the pass. So hoping for a shootout there, get Darnell Mooney back in the swing of things. Drake London, of course, is still the number 1 choice there. But, yeah, Ray McCloud has certainly been looking solid. And, again, it's the Byemagedon too. So if you could use somebody, see if Ray McCloud's open on your waiver wire, because he might be a benefit this week, especially in this revenge game for Mr. Cousins. All right, we head to the tight end position, and got a few near the top, 82%, Trey McBride, George Kittle, 80%. We've got Brock Bowers, 75%, but he is number 1 in total points. In fact, those guys are 1, 2, 3. And Bowers is 75%. We got Evan Ingram back earning a clutch game, so 63%, but he's only playing 8 games, so a little bit behind. Kelsey slowly crawling up now up to 58%. Jonnu Smith up to 58%. Boy, that's a guy that's been red hot. And I hope he continues that all the way through week 17. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Anyway, Ron, and then after that, we kind of drop off into the 50 and under. We do have a few like Ertz, Andrews, and Hunter Henry at 54. But the tight end position is what it is. We kind of look at these each week and kind of try to find these guys who are starting to get hot, like a Jonnu Smith, catch them, grab them off the waiver wire before they, become too obvious to everybody and you miss out on them. But we got quite a few that are 3 out of 3, 2 out of 3, some of those kind of guys. So, Ron, what's the tight end position been looking for you this year? Have you been streaming? Have you been lucky and get some of those bigger boys? Or you just been kind of like piecing things together like 90% of the fantasy players this year?
A couple of my 1 money league, George Kittle has been solid. It's funny, looking at these guys at the top, a buddy of mine that I helped out with his team, he had George Kittle in his, and he went into the game last week against Buffalo needing, I think, 4 points. And the text I got the morning after the game was Kittle screwed me. He had 1 catch for 7 yards. So didn't get it done last week, but he's been getting it done just about everywhere else. Of course, the conditions in that game, you saw that. So, Buffalo was a little more familiar with that than San Francisco was, to say the least. Another thing I want to point out, too, if you haven't had a chance to watch Brock Bowers play, my goodness, is that guy fun to watch play. And it's going to be super interesting to see where he goes in drafts. I know they are not a great team. Quarterback situation is not great, but man, is that guy fun to watch to play. It was fun to watch him last week. The guy that I've got most shares of, and I think you've got a few shares of him too, finally started to come around a little bit, even though he's still sitting at 44%, consistent 11th in total points, and that's David Njoku. David Njoku last week, big game in that. Huge output from Jameis Winston that you were talking about earlier, a whopping 17 targets from Jameis Winston. We love to see that. Holding 9 of those for 52 yards and 2 scores. 2 weeks ago, 9 for 81. He's had a couple of touchdowns along the way. He's getting it done most weeks just enough to get you that clutch game. But again, that team is different with Jameis Winston back there. I know he had kind of a quiet game against Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago, and they have Pittsburgh this week, but it is at home, so hopefully he can get loose and get something there, get you a touchdown, especially when you're fighting for those playoff spots. But a guy that, again, he's going to be targeted early and often when Jameis Winston's in there. Even in that game against Pittsburgh, had 5 targets, only holding 1. So hopefully they'll find some creative ways to get him the ball, because the dude is an absolute beast in the red zone. And hopefully that continues and it keeps continuing on into the playoffs. So David Njoku, a guy that you kind of got middle rounds, kind of played like a middle round guy, but the last couple of weeks showed some signs of life to be that tight end 1 that we were hoping that he was going to be in drafts.
Yeah, I mean, we can only hope and pray that Deshaun Watson just they don't let him play next year, and Jameis is the starter from the get go, because then I'll be drafting Njoku everywhere. Just because of that, because he definitely loves him, as he should, because he's a great player, great tight end, gets open, does a great job at what he does. Just like I did for the running backs when I kind of talked about two on the same team. I'm going to do the same thing for tight ends, which is rare. Stop me if you heard this. There are two tight ends in New England that are actually both producing fantasy levels. When's the last time you heard that? Don't mention it. There was a murder involved. But
it's been a while. We'll say it's been a while.
It's been a while. But it is happening again in New England. We're having kind of a renaissance here. Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper coming back from the dead. This guy has had 0 clutch games through week 11. And all of a sudden, he's got 2 straight. And on top of that, Hunter Henry is 2 out of his last 3. So, they're putting up clutch games like there's no tomorrow at tight end. Well, why is that so, Bob? Glad you asked. Let's talk about their wide receiver core there. Kendrick Bourne, Kayshawn, is it Booty or Boot? I don't know.
So according to I listened to the Colts Patriots game last week on the radio, and according to the guy that does play-by-play for the Colts, it's Kendrick Boutte.
Boutte. Okay.
Yes.
Well, Boutte sucks. And Demario Douglas. Those 3 combined for 10 catches for less than 100 yards. Okay. But the 2 tight ends, 7 for 75 for Hunter Henry, 4 for 42 at a touchdown for Austin Hooper. And they've done that in back-to-back weeks where they've had more catches than the wide receivers. I think it's going to continue. Drake May is a good quarterback, but he's a rookie. He's got to have those security blankets. And Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry are just that for him. Their wide receivers suck. Javon Baker and Jalen Polk, which was their 2 rookies, they're not even playing. I don't know if Baker's just sitting on the bench. He's that bad, but he hasn't had a target or a catch all year. Polk is maybe 10 catches total for the whole season. So that's all they got. And, that's what they're going to try to win with. Run the ball with Ramondre Stevenson. Antonio Gibson's getting a little bit involved in that offense now. And then you got these 2 tight ends. So, again, if you want to jump out there, grab, Hooper would probably be the one that's available. Hunter Henry might be. You never know. A few weeks ago, week 10, he was 1 for 14. Probably got dropped. And maybe people kind of forgot about him. But definitely take a look and see if either one or if not both are available in your league and grab them. So, it's interesting to see 2 tight ends in New England again. That's kind of fun. So, Ron, as always, we've got your card of the week. What do you got for us this week?
So just reach in and grab the rando, and I'm glad that I grabbed this one. And let me get it to where you can't see the glare there, but just the one and only Barry Sanders, the 1995 Upper Deck football set, making one of the Chicago Bears linebackers look absolutely silly. And I want you to see this. Are you kidding me with what this guy used to do? Like, look at that. Not down. He's like in centimeters from touching the ground. But again, just video game type numbers. Go back and look at Barry Sanders highlight reels. You will not be disappointed. He's one of my favorite guys to go back and look at and just look at those incredible runs that he had. And just an amazing player all around. But yeah, so heading into week 14, heading into that last bye week, head over to BigGuyFantasySports.com. We've got all kind of stuff. I'm doing a little bit different article this last couple of weeks. I'm looking at some guys that in each position that you drafted late or you didn't draft at all that are turning out to be ultra consistent. Got the running backs this week, did the quarterbacks last week. So we're looking at a guy like Bucky Irving is in there. Chase Brown is in there. Those guys that if you're headed to the playoffs, you've probably got some of these guys that I'm writing about and you got them late and you're happy with your return on investment. I just do kind of a real quick speculative look at those. So go check that out. Go check out everything we got over Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Of course, we'll have the props. We'll have the consistently cashing, the who's hot, who's not, the way, all that great stuff. Go. And of course, the consistency that you come to, you love it. You love the consistency at BigGuyFantasySports.com.
You have to. You just have to. It's what's helping us getting to a lot of the playoffs this year for us, and hopefully It's doing it for you. Got a lot of people reaching out to me. Hey, Bob, heading to the playoffs. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And nothing makes me happier than to see that. Because it's not about me. It's not about Ron. It's about you folks out there that are listening. So thank you for doing that. As always, as Ron said, check out everything James Knight we got his article out today, the Under the Waiver Wire. Another great article he always puts out, the people that are just, flying under the radar in a typical 12-team league, regular type stuff. So definitely check all that out. As Ron said, prop bets, DFS this weekend, consistently cash, and check them all out. Colby will be back from his fourth DL stint this year. I don't know. It seems like he's been missing a lot. But anyway, we love him. He'll be back. So check everything out this weekend. So for Ron Rigney, I'm Bob Lung. Take care. God bless. And we will see you